Imagine you feel a strange lump on your body. At first, it's easy to ignore. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it'll disappear on its own, so you keep living your life. Days pass, then weeks, then months. But the lump doesn't go away. It gets bigger, harder, more noticeable. Soon, other people start noticing it too. Someone asks about it. You shrug, pretend it doesn't bother you. But every time your hand brushes against it, the same thought returns. What is this? Today, you'd probably visit a doctor. You'd get a scan, maybe a diagnosis, maybe treatment. But for most of human history, none of those things existed. No hospitals, no medicine, no surgery, no explanation, just a growing lump that nobody could understand. And that's what makes this story so strange, because cancer feels like a modern disease, something caused by pollution, factories, processed food, modern life. But cancer doesn't care about any of that. In fact, ancient humans were facing cancer thousands of years before the first hospital was ever built. Which raises a disturbing question. What happened when there was no cure? Not just no treatment, no explanation, no understanding, no way of knowing what was happening inside your own body. And once you start thinking about that, a much bigger mystery appears. Because the real question isn't whether ancient humans got cancer. The real question is how they faced it. The first problem with this story is that most of us don't expect cancer to exist in the Stone Age at all. It feels wrong. When people think about cancer, they think about cigarettes, pollution, processed food, factories, chemicals, modern life. And honestly, that assumption makes sense. If cancer is so common today, then surely something about the modern world must be causing it, right? But that's where things start getting strange. Because cancer isn't a modern invention. Humans didn't create it. Civilization didn't create it. In fact, cancer existed long before the first city, long before agriculture, long before money, long before written language. And that's difficult for many people to accept. After all, what could possibly cause cancer in a world without factories or fast food? The answer is surprisingly simple. Cancer isn't really a disease of civilization. It's a disease of living things. Every time cells divide, mistakes can happen. Most are harmless, some are not. And as long as living organisms have existed, those mistakes have been possible, which means cancer didn't suddenly appear when humans became modern. It may have been traveling alongside us for much longer than anyone expected, and the evidence for that is hidden in a place few people ever think to look: ancient skeletons. At first, that might sound impossible. How can we know whether someone had cancer thousands of years ago? It's not as if ancient humans left behind medical records. They didn't write down symptoms, they didn't document diagnoses, most of them didn't write anything at all. And yet, some of the strongest evidence comes from something much harder to fake: bones. When archaeologists uncover ancient human remains, they're not just finding skeletons, they're finding clues, tiny pieces of evidence frozen in time. Sometimes those clues reveal injuries, sometimes diseases, and occasionally they reveal something far more surprising: tumors. In 1932, archaeologists working in Kenya recovered a fragment of ancient human jawbone. It had been buried for roughly 1.7 million years. When researchers examined it more closely, they found something unexpected: signs of Burkitt's lymphoma, a fast-moving cancer that attacks the jaw. This wasn't a medieval skeleton. This wasn't Bronze Age remains. This was one of our earliest known ancestors, and the cancer had already found them. That discovery changes the entire conversation, because it proves something important. Cancer wasn't waiting for civilization to arrive. It was already here, quietly following humanity through prehistory. But finding cancer in ancient bones creates a much bigger mystery. Knowing that ancient humans got cancer is one thing. Understanding what that experience felt like is something else entirely. Because unlike us, they had no way of naming the thing that was happening to them. And that may be the strangest part of this entire story. Today, if something feels wrong, we have words for it: cancer, tumor, disease, diagnosis. Ancient humans had none of those things. Imagine noticing a lump that keeps growing year after year. You know it's there. Other people can see it too. Maybe it starts causing pain. Maybe it makes certain movements harder. Maybe you feel weaker than before, but you have no idea why it's happening. You don't know what's growing inside your body. You don't know whether it will stop. You don't know whether anyone else has ever experienced the same thing. And most importantly, you don't know what's coming next. For an ancient human, cancer wasn't cancer. It was simply something strange, something unexplained, something that didn't belong. It's possible some groups viewed it as bad luck. Others may have seen it as a spiritual problem. Some may have accepted it as a normal part of life. The truth is, we don't know. What we do know is that regardless of what they believed, the physical reality remained the same. The lump kept growing. The pain often became worse. And eventually, cancer created a problem that every ancient human understood immediately: survival. Because in the Stone Age, staying alive wasn't about understanding a disease, it was about what that disease stopped you from doing. Imagine you're sitting by the fire one evening. The group is preparing to move at dawn. You've made this journey dozens of times before. But tonight, something feels different. Your shoulder aches in a way it didn't last season. When you reach for your spear, the grip feels uncertain. You look at your hand for a moment, then you look away, because there is no word for what's happening, no explanation. Just a slow, quiet change that you can't stop and can't explain. And in the ancient world, that kind of change had consequences. Survival depended on tiny differences. A slower runner was easier to catch. A weaker hunter brought home less food. A person who tired easily became a liability during long journeys. Cancer wasn't just a disease. It threatened your place in the group. And in the Stone Age, losing your place in the group could be almost as dangerous as the disease itself. Humans survived because they worked together. Nobody hunted alone all the time. Nobody raised children alone. Nobody faced every challenge alone, which raises an uncomfortable question. If cancer made you weaker, if it made you slower, if it made you less useful, what happened then? Would the people around you continue helping? Or would they leave you behind? Most people assume they would. After all, that's how ancient humans are usually portrayed. Brutal, practical, unforgiving. The common image is simple. If you couldn't keep up, you were left behind. If you couldn't contribute, your chances of survival disappeared. And honestly, that sounds reasonable. Life in the Stone Age was hard enough already. Food was never guaranteed. Injuries were common. Every extra burden carried a cost. So why would a group spend precious resources helping someone who might never recover? For a long time, many people assumed they wouldn't. Then archaeologists started finding something strange. In a cave in northern Iraq, researchers discovered the remains of a Neanderthal man. He had lived with a withered arm, a crushed eye socket, and severe arthritis for years, possibly decades, before his death. His injuries would have made it nearly impossible to hunt, carry supplies, or travel without help. And yet he survived long past the point where survival alone made any sense. He has a name now, Shanidar I. And what his bones tell us is straightforward. Someone kept feeding him. Someone kept protecting him. Someone decided again and again that this person was worth keeping alive. And Shanidar I wasn't alone. Archaeologists have since found similar patterns across the ancient world. People with severe injuries, people with major disabilities, people whose bodies showed signs of long-term physical problems, and yet they lived. Not for days, not for weeks, sometimes for years. Which creates a problem for the traditional story, because nobody survives that long alone. Someone had to help them, someone had to care, someone had to make a choice, and the more evidence researchers uncovered, the harder it became to ignore an unexpected possibility. Maybe ancient humans were not nearly as ruthless as we imagine. In fact, some of the strongest evidence suggests the opposite, and that completely changes the way we think about cancer in the ancient world. And that's where this stops being a story about cancer and starts becoming a story about people. Because once researchers began finding evidence of long-term care in ancient societies, a new possibility emerged. What if cancer wasn't something ancient humans faced alone? Think about it. A person weakened by illness still needs food, still needs protection, still needs a place within the group. Those things don't happen automatically. Other people have to provide them, which means somewhere in prehistory, someone made a choice to share food instead of keeping it, to slow down instead of moving ahead, to help instead of abandoning. And that's far more remarkable than it sounds, because cooperation is expensive. Every resource given to a sick person is a resource not used somewhere else. Every act of care comes with a cost. Yet humans kept doing it, again and again, not because they had medicine, not because they understood cancer, but because helping each other may have been one of the most powerful survival strategies our species ever developed. In a strange way, cancer revealed something important about humanity. It exposed the difference between humans and many other animals. Humans don't survive because we're the strongest. We survive because we help. And that leads to a realization most people never expect when they start learning about cancer in the ancient world. The strange thing is that ancient humans couldn't cure cancer. They couldn't remove it. They couldn't scan for it. They couldn't even explain it. And yet, in some ways, they may have understood something that still matters today, because when people hear the word cancer, they usually think about medicine, doctors, hospitals, treatments, technology. Ancient humans had none of those things. What they did have was each other. And for most of human history, that may have been the difference between facing illness alone and facing it together. Cancer could still cause pain. It could still weaken the body. It could still take lives. But illness didn't automatically mean isolation. The archaeological evidence suggests that many ancient humans continued caring for people long after those individuals stopped being able to fully care for themselves. Which means the real story isn't that ancient humans defeated cancer. They didn't. The real story is that they faced it, and that's an important distinction. Because even today, despite all our medical advances, one of the hardest parts of cancer isn't always the disease itself. It's facing it alone. Thousands of years have passed. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Medicine has transformed the world. Yet one thing remains surprisingly familiar. When humans suffer, other humans show up. And long before hospitals existed, that may have been humanity's greatest treatment of all: each other. And perhaps that's the most surprising part of this entire story. Not that ancient humans got cancer, not that cancer is older than civilization, but that the people facing it may not have been as different from us as we imagine. It's easy to think of ancient humans as primitive, as if they lived in a completely different world. But strip away the technology, the hospitals, and the modern language, and the experience starts to feel strangely familiar. Someone notices something wrong, fear appears, questions follow. The future becomes uncertain, and suddenly the thing they need most isn't information, it's other people. That's what makes cancer such an unusual window into the past, because it reveals something deeper than disease. It reveals human nature. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived ice ages, predators, famine, injury, and illness. Not because we were the fastest, not because we were the strongest, but because we were willing to help each other when things went wrong. Cancer may have looked different. The world may have looked different, but the human response may have been surprisingly familiar. Long before doctors existed, ancient humans were already using the survival tool that matters most: each other.